Thank you very much, Patrick. It's great to hear from the Secretary General, former United Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon. Your Excellency, President Felix Tshisekedi, President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Chairperson of the African Union. Your Excellency Ali Bongo Ondimba, President of Gabon and African Union champion of the African Adaptation Initiative. Your Royal Majesties, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, Your Excellency, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Your Excellency, Ban Ki-moon, the former United Nations Secretary General, Your Excellency, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, my dear brother Moussa Faki, the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, my sister Kristalina Georgieva, the Director General of the World Trade Organization, my big sister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros, the United States Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, the Chairman of COP26, Right Honorable Alok Sharma of the United Kingdom, Honorable Ministers, business and media leaders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and all of you joining us from around the world. I welcome you all and thank you immensely for honoring our invitation to this Global Leaders Dialogue on Climate Adaptation for Africa. It is such a huge honor to have over 20 heads of state and governments with us today in what is clearly the largest ever gathering of global leaders on climate adaptation for Africa. Thank you so much, Your Excellencies. I speak today with all humility and lift my voice to raise an alarm on climate change in Africa. I raise it for our leaders. I raise it for our nations. I raise it for our youth. I raise it for our women. I raise it for our today, and I raise it for Africa's future. Africa, which is the world's least carbon emitter, is facing the worst consequences of the impacts of climate change. 10 of the top 12 countries most at risk of droughts are in Africa. 8 out of the top 12 countries affected by agricultural risks are also in Africa. The percentage of years in which droughts affected more than 2 million people in Africa has increased from 20% to a whopping 90%. The International Monetary Fund estimates that Africa's climate adaptation costs will reach $50 billion by 2040 every year. Yet, Africa does not get the resources it needs to adapt to climate change. Globally, only 10% of climate finance goes into adaptation, and Africa has only received only 3% of global climate finance. We feel, Your Excellencies and leaders, climate change will live with climate change every day in Africa. Hurricanes Idia and Kenneth that pummeled Mozambique and Zimbabwe and Malawi left over 1,000 people dead and destroyed over $2 billion worth of infrastructure. Droughts have turned a vast part of Africa into parched lands as scorching heat dries up rivers and lakes, affecting access to water, navigation, and in fact, triggering conflicts. Africa needs global solidarity on climate change. Solidarity to boost Africa's resources and capacities to adapt to climate change. Solidarity with nations to secure themselves against catastrophic risk events and damage. Solidarity to support millions of farmers who face huge challenges to adapt to changes they did not cause. Solidarity with the youth and women who are bearing the brunt of climate change in lost opportunities for jobs and incomes. From our rural villages to our communities and our sprawling urban cities, there must be climate change solidarity. Our solidarity must translate to decisive actions. The African Development Bank is taking decisive actions. we increased the share of our financing going to climate from 9% in 2016 to 38% in 2019. And we expect to reach 40% by this year. The African Development Bank has far exceeded the call of United Nations Secretary General Guterres for multilateral developing banks to devote 50% of their climate finance to adaptation. The bank achieved 50% parity in climate adaptation by 2018. We increased allocation to climate adaptation to 58% by 2019. And by 2020, we devoted 67% to climate adaptation. The African Development Bank's commitment to climate finance will reach $25 billion by 2025. Our financing is going towards support for large-scale climate adaptation initiatives in Africa. The bank is implementing the Desert to Power initiative to build the world's largest solar zone in the Sahel, to provide renewable energy for 250 million people. And work has started in Burkina Faso, Chad, and Mali, working with Agence Française de Développement. The bank is supporting the Great Green Wall Initiative, a climate defense shield to protect the Sahel from desertification, for which we have committed to mobilize $6.5 billion at the conference called by President Emmanuel Macron. The bank's technologies for African agricultural transformation, which we call TAT or TAAT, is working on the ground in 37 African countries in providing farmers with climate resilient seeds to protect them and help them to adapt to drought, to pests and diseases. In 2019, we provided 2.6 million farmers with drought-tolerant maize to cope with droughts that were ravaging Eastern Africa countries. In Sudan and Ethiopia, hundreds of thousands of farmers now plant heat-tolerant wheat varieties that are rapidly boosting food security. We supported 600,000 farmers in Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Zambia with treated technologies that allow them to survive the massive devastation of the fall armyworms. The bank's Africa Disaster Risk Insurance Facility helps to pay for insurance for countries to insure themselves against climate-related disasters to build resilience. The African Development Bank, Your Excellencies, and the Global Center for Adaptation have launched the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program to further scale climate adaptation solutions across all African countries. Our goal is to mobilize $25 billion for climate adaptation for Africa. The African Adaptation Acceleration Program will build on what is working and speed up the actualization of the African Adaptation Initiative of the African Union. We plan to provide digital climate information and advisory services for 30 million farmers. Through our Africa Resilient Infrastructure Accelerator, we plan to mobilize support to scale up climate resilient urban and rural infrastructure, including water, renewable energy, roads, and housing. We will support small island states to build climate resilience. We will mobilize and leverage global finance to support the private sector. We will work to align financial systems in Africa to support climate finance and green investments, and to align with the Paris Agreement. And we plan to support 1 million youth with skills and knowledge for climate adaptation to create much needed green jobs, building 10,000 youth-led climate adaptation businesses. Your Excellencies, we must now raise ambition for climate finance for Africa. Only ambition scale, finance, and delivery matters. Together, let's mobilize financing for the success of the African Adaptation Acceleration Program. It is time for developed countries to meet their promise of providing $100 billion annually for climate finance. And a greater share of this should go to climate adaptation. Your Excellencies, so far over $20 trillion have gone into COVID-19 stimulus packages in developed economies. The plan of the IMF to issue $650 billion of new SDRs to boost global reserves and liquidity will be enormously helpful to boost fiscal space. It will be even more helpful if developed countries were to agree to allocate a significant share of their own SDRs to developing countries, especially to more vulnerable low-income countries. I wish to applaud the United States, and in particular the US Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, for her global leadership on this, as well as the Managing Director of IMF, our sister Kristalina Georgieva. The SDRs can help to also provide resources to boost green growth and climate financing as we build economies back to the triple win with health, economic, and climate resilience. So let's make a big push on expanding fiscal space. As we look, Your Excellencies, towards COP26 in Glasgow, let us make a big push on climate finance, and let us make a even bigger push on climate adaptation. For it is now high time to massively support climate adaptation finance for Africa. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies.